listening to Life-Sparring, fighting mediocrity one round at a time. In the blue corner, guilty of Googling all of their symptoms and regularly consulting WebMD. From Hong Kong, your host, Fabian Gruber. In the red corner, a medical rock star and composer of songs like the Upper Airway Obstruction Management song from Lund, Sweden, Dr. Henrik Widegren. This is Life-Sparring Round 15. Let's go.
Today we have a live sparring round with a health focus again. So it's important to start with a disclaimer. This podcast is for information and entertainment purpose only. While we discuss medical topics, we are not providing medical advice. And if you are facing a health scare of any kind, you should see a local healthcare professional without a delay and do not rely on information from the internet. Actually, this is the topic of today's round of live sparring, but just hear it from our guest, Dr. Henrik Widegren himself.
One evening my father said, "My son, I'm dying and soon I'll be gone. But before my final farewell, hear me and hear me well. Do whatever you want to do. Have a plan or roll the dice. But one thing is strictly taboo. Please follow my advice. Never Google your symptoms. That is my only prescription. You get 100 diagnoses, a medieval prognosis. Every sign is a serious condition.
Welcome to another round of live sparring. I always try to get real experts in their respective fields to spar with me. And for today, I managed to convince an absolute medical rock star to record a podcast episode with me. So quite a lot, really, because my guest, Henrik Widegren from Sweden, is not just a practicing otolaryngologist or ear, nose, and throat doctor. He's also a practicing musician who published multiple music albums in Swedish and English and landed a viral hit in 2019 with his song Never Google Your Symptoms. Henrik, welcome to Live Sparring.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and typically we start our interviews right at the beginning. In your case, I think the main question is really, what came first? Your love of medicine or your love of music?
I didn't start studying medicine before I was 20 years old. So I have to say that the music came first. In Sweden, we have this called municipal music schools. It's like schools that they're free and all the kids can start to play instruments. And when I was young, I had to start with the recorder, like the flute. I had to start with that. And it's kind of a boring instrument, I would say. But if you start with that, but then I was kind of 8. And then I started with the violin. I hated the violin. It was just because my mom wanted me to play violin. But then actually, after a couple of years, my older sister, she was then playing guitar, but she thought that the guitar got boring. So she gave me the guitar. And that was very lucky, I think, because so I started to play, and so I fell in love with the guitar. And then also I started to sing in choirs and stuff. But I would recommend if you want to start with an instrument, the guitar is very good, easy to learn. I mean, with 3 chords, you can sing almost all songs. Very practical. So I have to say that music came first, but then, you go to university and I started with medicine. We have at universities in Sweden, it's pretty common with something called specs. And specs is like an amateur musical theater kind of thing, like variety shows. And so you do productions every year, and I joined one of those companies. And there, of course, you sing and you play and you do shows and have fun. So I think I'll always try to combine medicine and music. But the music came first, I have to say.
And growing up, were you as nerdy as the character in your song Revenge of the Nerd? It sounded a bit of autobiographic when I listened to it.
Oh, a part of that song is me, absolutely. I wasn't very welcome in the school soccer team. No, I wasn't a good football player. But and part of that song is from colleagues and research colleagues I have met. At the university, you meet a lot of brilliant, nice, nerdy people who loves their science. And I think that song should be like a tribute to those people who because sometimes look down upon, but I think they carry us forward.
Perfect. And how did you get into medicine? I mean, in the first place. So was that kind of a natural choice? Are you coming from a long line of Swedish doctors, or are you the first doctor in the family? Like, how did you choose that major?
Now, that's a good question because, as you say, anyway, in Sweden, to be a doctor, it's kind of it's a job that often goes from parents to their kids. But no, I haven't had any doctors in my family. To me, it was more like when I was starting to think of what I should become. I always liked science and natural sciences, but actually, for a while, I thought about becoming an engineer. But then I think I choose medicine because I think it's science in what I had to use, but I work with people. I use it on people. And I think that at the point when those two factors meet, I think it's the most important. Because, yeah, a patient come to me with a problem, and of course, we have to use science or what we know to try to cure them. But then in the end of the day, it's the patient chooses. And I also have to have the patient's best in mind because, I mean, for example, a very nice and old lady can come with a problem, and I know that I could fix it with some big surgery. But then also I know that maybe if this fails when she gets bad, it's going to be much worse. So I think that that's the important and very interesting thing with the
Yeah,
job.
I saw that you kind of contributed a big quote or like a forward for like a research done on communication of doctors, actually not even related to your field, but I think your hospital kind of chose your quote about how the importance of communication with patients. And yeah, that seems to be quite telling. That also one of your drivers, like to enter the field in the first place.
Yeah, I think it is. In the beginning, you have to learn the job. In my case, I have to learn to make diagnosis and operate and stuff. But then the most important thing, and I think this must be in all jobs, is after a while you also should communicate with this to your people. In my case, it's the patients. In other cases, it's like the clients or the customers. And I think that is communication level is often much harder than the job in the first place. And I think that's also the thing you get better when you grow in a work.
And then I have to ask, so why otolaryngology? I mean, there are other specialties that are easier to pronounce and maybe even have kind of more like TV fame. I don't know, heart surgeon and brain surgeons and
Yeah.
why?
And the neurosurgeons, of course.
Yeah, why like ears, nose, and throat?
Ear, nose, throat. It's a very nice variety. It's like variety in the patients. I hope both have older people and kids. It's fun. It's also like some cases are very easy cases, a quick fix, and other cases are very complicated, like cancers and big operations and stuff. And also, it's easy to. I think it is often we have the easy diagnosis, but the hard thing is what you're going to do with it. I think is also interesting. And also, we have some emergency stuff that's interesting. For example, the airways, when people can't breathe and stuff. So it's not emergency all the time, but sometimes it is. But I think the variety is what make me like it most. And then, of course, the clinic I work with, my department, I have very, very nice colleagues. I started at my department because when I was a student, I thought, oh, those doctors, they seem to have a nice, relaxed, chill atmosphere. They know what they're doing, but they don't have to brag about it. So then you start with your internship there, and they're very nice. It's like you said before, also interesting because I also, in the beginning when I was a student, you think about heart surgery, neurosurgery, and stuff. And I think that is a very challenging and interesting field. But anyway, at my hospital, the doctors on those, or like the thoracic surgeons, they're a little bit too, how would I say this in a diplomatic way?
Drive a Porsche, you wanna say, not a Volvo.
Yeah, they're very fortunate. They think a lot about themselves and they show it also a little bit too much, I think. I like more to work with humble colleagues, I think. Not all neurosurgeons and thoracic surgeons and stuff do like this, but so maybe some more. So I think we have a very relaxed specialty.
Okay, cool. Because I had another doctor on the show a while back, and she was a urologist, and I of course also had to ask her like how she entered the field because I think it's fascinating.
For a woman, that's also in Sweden, it's kind of unusual, absolutely. But I also think urology was very interesting. I can see why she likes it.
Yeah, but for her,
It's
it was
interesting.
also like more like what you said. It was more like a choice based on mentors, on great doctors that she met, where she said, "Hey, I mean, these guys
Yeah.
are just doing a great
Yeah.
job," and it seems to be really like a big factor, like in the internships where you're rotating a little bit, where you kind of just
Yeah.
see and yeah, like to whom you look up to and from whom you think you also maybe you can learn more. I mean, that this influences quite a bit the choice.
I agree. It's very, I mean, for example, you can also have the example when you do research or what you start to do research in what area, because in the beginning in all areas research is kind of from the beginning it's a little bit in this area it looks maybe boring, it's word, but then you start just in some area and you start because you have a good mentor, a good professor, and then you learn the area and then it gets interesting. But it's often the lab, the professors that maybe make you inspired of those very nerdy areas that on the surface is kind of who would like to do this, but then when you get into it it's interesting, but you can't get into it if you don't start doing it. So I think I agree totally. People and colleagues are important, very
And how
important.
is your daily work? So you work in a big public clinics system, right? So it's really like you have
Yeah.
your patient hours and then you have operations scheduled, like just really the normal mix of things.
Yeah, so exactly. It's a university hospital, Skåne University Hospital in the very southern part of Sweden. It's in Lund. It's Sweden's biggest university town. So it is this public hospital. Most hospitals in Sweden are public. All our healthcare system is very public, you can say. So it's state funded. And as you say, I also have outpatient clinic and some operation days and some days that I operate my patient, they stay at the ward. So, and also as it is a university, we also have teaching for the new doctors and to me, it's also for the speech therapists. So I think it's variety and a good mix.
And then there's the other career. So how did your musical career evolve after university? So in university, you joined those variety shows, and
Ooh.
how did it go from there?
After university, in the beginning, you have to work a lot, so it became less music when I did my internship. But then after a while, I joined a barbershop quartet, like four-part harmony singing, and we did that for a couple of years. Very, very nice. You can also, like in barbershop, you can compete, and it's fun. It's a good way of learning how to sing in tune. So it was fun. But then our quartet, we got kids and stuff, and people gotta go do careers and get busy. So then I one day a colleague of mine at the hospital, he has also actually he's a singer in a band, in another band, and he was starting a hospital after work. So we thought that, oh, we're gonna do after work, Henrik. Could you so we have to have some entertainment, some singing and stuff. So that's why I started to write a couple of songs to this after work, and it was fun. And I wrote a few more songs, and then after a while, I made my first album, and then I started putting the songs up on YouTube because I got, this cooperation with a Swedish doctor site kind of thing, and after that, it went on. And as you said, a couple of years ago, I got this very unlikely viral hit with "Never Google Your Symptoms," and I was
But
very
first you
surprised.
changed. I mean, you started in Swedish, right? So then when
Yeah.
came kind of the point where you said, "Wow, well, I think I could conquer the world with my songs about the medical system and related topics."
Well, I think the word is not conquered yet, but it's new. That was a colleague of mine. She was arranging this big international conference in Sweden for doctors, and she was kind of, can you translate those songs? At first, I said, "Are you crazy? It's so much work," and because those songs, some of them are about the Swedish healthcare system, I thought you can't do that. But then I took some of the songs that I thought that foreign colleagues could relate to, and I translated them. Yeah, it was fun. It worked, and then my idea got. I could make an album. I mean, done half the work already. So then I did and put it up. And in the beginning, I think with all music, no one listened to it in the beginning, and after a while, people discovered it. But it was very fun when it happened.
And did you have any expectation at the beginning when you put it out? What was kind of the plan in mind? Was there a plan behind?
No, no. It was. I just like you said. I kind of realized that if I can't expect all the world to know Swedish, so I thought, okay, if I make them in English, some people can understand anyways, and then you just see what happens. And the first couple of months, some people listen to it, but not very much. But then one day I start to get emails and messages and like from India. I was very surprised. But then it turns out that the video to this song, Never Google Your Symptoms, it had been ripped by some Indian doctor Facebook group that was pretty big. So they started to go around there, and then it's spread from there. And I'm very happy that they ripped the video, so they got it moving. So, but it was kind of weird to it's fun to start to speak with foreign colleagues about their problems and their medical stuff. But it was a coincidence, but that's how it happens usually.
It's fascinating. I was late to the game, right? I think your big viral hit was in 2019, pretty much. I listened to the song like just a few weeks back when my wife found it, I think on Spotify somehow. I don't know how she found it, but I had to laugh about it because she's very guilty of Googling her symptoms and diagnosing me with the rarest of all diseases because statistics is not her friend, and that a likelihood that a sickness that only a few people in a million have is not so particularly likely to hit you is beyond. So I had a good laugh when I heard it, and I looked you up, and I thought, okay, I mean, it's a nice song, but like who is the person behind it? Is it a comedian? Because we have in Germany, there's a famous German comedian who's actually a doctor. And so I was then very interested to find out your story and that you're an actual practicing doctor. And for once, it's interesting that in Sweden, there seems to be this very strong tradition of singing medical professionals because, you know, like Dr. Alban, of course, he sang "It's My Life." He didn't sing "It's My Root Canal," but he was apparently a dentist. So yeah, it seems to be that's a thing, like Swedish doctors singing. And
maybe. And also, I think a lot of colleagues also in my area, and also I'm a phoniatrician. That is, I work with vocal cords. So I mean, a lot of my close colleagues, they also sing, and a lot of my patients are singers too. And most of them maybe is more like classical singers, I would say. But also, I think the interesting thing with Never Google Your Symptoms, the song, I mean, of course, from the beginning, I wrote it after I had a couple of patients just in a row that came to me, and their voices were bad and they were hoarse, and all of those three people had Google. And all the three were terrified because they thought they had a vocal cord cancer. And I could just look at them and say, no, you don't have. So they were happy. But then I wrote this song. And in the beginning, when I wrote it and when I put it up on internet, I thought that this was mainly a problem for the Western countries, Western neurotic academic people who Google too much and have too much time on their hands. But then I think it became also big, like, you know, I said in India, and also it's like in the Arab world. And I got letters from doctors in Africa. And the interesting thing is their problem with people Google their symptoms is that in those countries, they don't have reliable internet sources, and they Google their symptoms, and then they come to people who suggest these really bad cures and want them to waste their money on stuff. So it's like, to them, it was like a big problem, but more like a real problem for patients that got hurt after Googling their symptoms. So
annoyed.
yeah, I was just like, I just think, don't stop doing that. But to those doctors, it was like a reality. So I think that was, I never knew that before.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I also didn't kind of see it from that angle. I mean, of course, I also kind of have more the Western view on it, even though I'm also kind of guilty of Googling my symptoms. And I'm also somebody who's a quantified self guy. And I think my issue with the medical sector is often that I think that a lot of doctors, they are very old school, especially in Hong Kong. You get your 3 minutes with the doctor and they look into your throat and listen, and then they tell you to drink warm water, and they're not particularly interested in your data or in other information that you could provide. That's not what they're trained to do, and that's not what they're interested in. And this information in the medical sector, it's a dicey question, kind of in both ways, right? In a way.
No, but I mean, and it is. I think it's a big issue that's going to grow bigger and bigger. And I don't think necessarily it's a problem, because as I live and work in Lund, that is a big university town. So I mean, I have a lot of patients that are well educated. And we often joke with, this problem with all those people who read too many books and come to me. But But I think, also a lot of my patients, they have come to me like in time because they've found these symptoms. They come to me, and we can do something good of it because maybe their skin cancer is very small, and we can just take it away, and everything is good. But I think we should be more just open. So that I appreciate, but they can just tell me, okay, I have these symptoms. I've Googled it and I found this. Is this? So it's much better if we're open with what we think and what expectations. Because the worst often, like I get a patient, they have symptom, and I check around, and oh, it looks good, fine. And on the way out, they say that, oh, but I read this. Could it be? And then if I knew that from the beginning, you can check it in another way. So I think actually it's an opportunity, but we should just be open to what we are scared of or what we think, etc. Actually, today, some of my patients, they know more about their own conditions than I do. But on the other hand, maybe I've met more patients. They have that because I've seen more patients. So, and as you say, a lot of people now have their own health data in apps and stuff. And still in healthcare, we don't know how to handle that in a good way. But I think it's the growing area that's going to be bigger and bigger.
For me, it's a fascinating area because, your doctor visits are very infrequent, and very often, like, for example, you do a health check once per year, and then you get some blood values and you get some urine analysis, but you have like a spot, just one data point a year. While, for example, if you have a health variable or something and you track heart rate variability or your resting heart rate over time, you have a baseline, and you see when something is changing. And that's something that I think that gets interesting, where I think you can get information, you can just realize, oh, something has changed. Might be not something bad, but let me observe it and let me kind of check in. And that's something like a doctor. If you see a doctor once per year, they can look if your values are kind of completely out of the spectrum, then they will flag it, but they don't know your base value. They don't know if your cholesterol is like out of your average value. They can just say, okay, in the population, right, this is bad. And that's something that I always think is something maybe in the next few years, I hope that it gets more of a topic, because I believe that the human body is kind of like a really complicated machine. And at the end, there are certain differences between us. And average is always complicated, right? I have this formula to calculate your maximum heart rate. And for men, it's 220 minus age. And it never worked for me. I'm always running 15 beats above. When I was young, I could go up to 210 in my 20s, and now I can still go to 195 or so on a hard run. And I shouldn't. But this is just, I know it because I've measured and I have a heart rate monitor. But if I just kind of check it once, I was, oh my God, do I get a heart attack? My heart rate is too high, right? And that's kind of just one of many examples. And it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, but I think I agree with you. I think medicine is going to be more individualized, as you say. The people maybe have their baselines, but I think the hard thing is that today we don't know actually how to interpret. Like, if in your case, if you know your heart rate variability, for example, when it goes up and down, when is it serious and what could it be a sign of? Because actually we haven't measured those things that much for a long time. So I don't think we really don't know what to use with it. If you're not like, I'm researching in this small area, I'm very good at it. So that's one thing, but I think it is, as you say, it's different. What the doctors, what our job is, because you can go two ways. Either you go and check your health frequently every year or anything. I've spoken to some colleagues in Germany, for example, that I know that it's much more usual that people do their yearly checkup at some place. You take all the lab works and maybe also X-rays and MR and stuff every year. And to us in Sweden, that's unusual, because in Sweden, it's much more like, when I get a new symptom that is bad, I go to the doctor. And sometimes it's nothing. And then sometimes it's not too good. We should have met you earlier. It's hard to say, because I don't think actually today we don't know how to use all the informations from those health apps, actually.
I think it's going to be really interesting, because I also believe that medicine could do more kind of to prevent and also to optimize sometimes, because it's not always about, sometimes it feels, especially us in Hong Kong, because in Hong Kong you have a private medical sector, but it's very transactional. I definitely still want to hear more about your musical career, because I can only assume that it was really like a different feeling, right? Before that, you're a doctor and you sing a little bit in your pastime, and now suddenly you have 4.5 million views on YouTube. And
Yeah.
I can't believe
Yeah.
that you didn't feel different. Didn't you suddenly feel like a musician or not like a doctor anymore?
Of course. I mean, I'm amazed and happy because of this, but still, it's sometimes I feel like the internet and the real world are like they're different worlds. I mean, you absolutely you can have 4 million hits on YouTube, but still, I go to work every day and meet my patients. But still, but also, I agree with you that in Sweden now and then I do small tours with shows and stuff, and I get more like, of course, people ask me to sing stuff in Sweden. Also, I start to getting like people asking from abroad also, so it's very fun. But then, still, it's like sometimes it's two worlds. My life hasn't changed dramatically. No, I wouldn't say that. But of course, I get proud. People like this song and they learn something from it. I love it. I think as a doctor and as I work at a university, it's also part of our job is to spread information. That I can say that in some ways I succeed that better than my some of my colleagues, that they can write a brilliant research paper that 100 people reads. I'm proud of it.
And I think we both like a little bit similar in that sense, that we both have our day jobs and we have something that we are doing on the side. In my case, it's a blog and now the podcast. For you, it's music. I read like an HBR article not so long ago about everybody should have at least two careers. And I really liked it. It's a short article, but I really liked it because basically what it said is that, yeah, a lot of people want to follow their passion. But if you are like a doctor, but you also like to sing, I mean, giving up your job and starting a musical career is just kind of a plunge. And it also is not a guarantee that you will be happy, even if you're successful. And that this is something, this idea of saying you do something that you do for a living, and you get fairly compensated, and you get some status from it, and you are reasonably good at it, and you enjoy it somewhat, but it's maybe not completely fulfilling for you. And at the same time, you maybe, instead of just playing golf or doing something, well, golf can be also that kind of second
Why do you say
career.
golf?
But I mean, you could, I
All
mean,
doctors play golf.
but yeah, you have something else that you are passionate about, and where you spend a little bit of time in, and you treat it kind of as if it's a professional career, even maybe if it doesn't necessarily pay any bills. Maybe it costs you something. In my case, I don't know, you paid for sure also a lot for studio time and other things. I think it's a fascinating idea, and I want to hear your thoughts of it, because the basic question is pretty much, do you think that your singing career makes you a better doctor?
I a very nice article. I agree totally with it, because I think one aspect of that is that sometimes maybe for your life, for your, I don't know, for your happiness or for your being happy, it's maybe good not to put all eggs in one basket, we say in Sweden, because sometimes work is a little bit slow and boring when your career goes, no, it goes on, but then also you can do something else that's fun. And then sometimes music and stuff is kind of slow and I have no idea. For me anyways, it works very much like that. You can do both, and then, as you say, being a doctor and making and performing music kind of fulfills different parts of you, of you want to do. But the interesting that you say that if it makes me better as a doctor performing it, and I've thought about it, and I think actually it does, because I think also, to me in a way, when I meet patients or when I like you're in the operating room, it's kind of close to performing, because when you perform or when you have to learn surgery and stuff, you have to know what you're going to do, you have to practice, you have to be good at it. But then in the real life situation, it's always something else that happens. It's not what you expect. It's not the patient doesn't want to do what you say. And then you have to improvise. And I think the improvising part, I mean, you just have to deal with the situation. And that I think is, I've learned very much from being on stage. Because I have a plan, and then suddenly some people say something or something breaks down, and they just have to like it and go on with it. So I think those two things go together.
And I had another idea. I mean, I didn't know you prior to talking to you today, but when you described kind of why you didn't like the neurosurgeon departments that much, I mean, of course, being a bit of a rock star on stage maybe frees you also like a little bit of having to be the rock star in the clinic and kind of getting
Yeah.
this kind of, I don't know, the applause in the
You can relax in the clinic. That's good. That's good. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm serious
Yeah.
about it because that's exactly what I also kind of think, right? If you are somebody who kind of wants the attention and wants to be in the center and you want to have the standing ovation, and you can have this as a doctor, right? If you do some brilliant operation that nobody has dared to do before and you do it successfully, then people applaud and you get hired to Sweden for well-paid, high-prestige jobs, and you get heralded until people maybe later find out that half of your research was, and some patients unfortunately die.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember. I think you sang a song about a
Yeah.
similar case like that.
Yeah, the Italian Paolo Macchiarini. Yeah, that's
So that's
I
kind of,
agree.
I mean, that is, it can lead to this, right? And I think if you are able to kind of get this kind of validation through another channel,
Yeah,
you can be humble as a doctor, and you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
need people to clap, right?
To me, I think it absolutely worked that way. It's good. It's good.
Before we continue with the interview, I would like to use the chance to introduce you to what is possibly my favorite song among Henrik's works. The song is called There Are 1,000 Songs of Love, but None About the Bowel. That's a song from Henrik's 2020 album Dr. Feelgood. Enjoy.
There are 1,000 songs of love, a love that's pure and strong, but none about the bowel, so I have to sing this song. Life without love is sad and filled with grief, but life without a rectum is brief. La 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 la. There are 1,000 songs of love, love's eternal magic, but none about the kidney. I think that is tragic. Life without kisses would really suck, but life without a spine, good luck. La 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 la.
Then I think we have to go back a little bit to the content of the song. So you said already kind of information, like informing about medical topics. That's one of the driver that at the first place get you to sing songs about medicine. Is there like mission that you see, like something where you really believe that things go wrong, or maybe also things go wrong in the medical sector? I mean, you cover a broad range of musical styles. That's another question that I wanted to ask you, if you have any musical role model, because I think you have from some bossa nova to more Western country to classical rock and roll. You cover pretty much a lot of musical styles too.
Yeah.
And so you cover kind of topics from medical scandals to anti-vaxxers to like COVID, and what's kind of the connecting element between it, like
Yeah.
musically, but also text-wise?
I think the connecting elements must be the smallest factor is, of course, it's about medicine and healthcare and science. And as you say, I mean, some of the songs I write is just for entertainment. I think this is the funny thing. I write about it. And then some things that you say, for example, the anti-vaxxer, or now the last year, I am Corona. Those are more try to inform and maybe try to get people to think, and they're not political, but try to inform people in a funny way. And yeah, for example, when we did the last year for the I'm Corona song, it was just in the beginning of the pandemic, and and those days, I think, anyway, in all the like the information in Sweden was very depressing information. Oh, do this or this, you're gonna die. And I think if you want to spread the message, what are the symptoms? What should you do? It's easier to make it a little bit more fun, so people maybe spread it, so people listen to it. And I mean, we had a small Corona dance and stuff. I mean, that could be. Some of my colleagues thought, yeah, you can't joke about that, Henrik. It's serious. But I think instead, yeah, I think we should, because then people think about it. That's often been my way of looking at it. But then, of course, some songs are just entertaining, and some are more informing. And then when it came to all the different styles, I know if you want to have some kind of listen to a special musical sound, don't listen to me. Listen to other people, because when I make a song, I make a demo of it, and then I go to the studio and I meet my very nice and talented producers, Marcus and Tobias, and together we kind of make up what's how is this song going to sound. It's going to be like a bossa nova, or is it blues, or is it classical rock, or what's it. And there we let the song kind of make the way. I mean, if it's a bluesy song, it can become a blues. If it's like like nice funny light song, it can be pop or bossa nova or anything. Now and then also, I mean, you can choose the musical genre a little bit ironic. I mean, you can have it's a very depressing lyrics, and then you make a happy, funny song of it. So I think it's I can't decide. We think, I mean, the album gets more variety, more fun to listen to. I think if it's different, but the only thing that connects it's usually that it's about medicine, science, and healthcare. That's the connecting part.
I definitely want to use the opportunity to talk about some medical topics. And I think one you covered in your songs, and it's a very serious one, and it's a very often misunderstood one, especially by women, and that's the man flu. So
oh yes.
yeah, so why is it that this very terrible predicament is so misunderstood, especially by women? Why don't they understand that men really suffer if they get the man flu? And what has there to be done in terms of research to finally find a way to relieve our pain?
Mm. I mean, I agree totally. I mean, they say that it hurts to make a baby, to give birth. I think they don't know what a man flu is. I agree totally. But actually, it was interesting because I think a couple of years ago, it was a Canadian doctor who wrote a review article that got published in British Medical Journal. And he didn't do original research, but he looked what's done research, and he was of course, it was like a fun article, but he was serious. But he said that when you look around at all the articles, it seems like when men get like a viral airway infection, like influenza or a cold, if you look at it, we get symptoms for 1.5 days more. We have a bigger risk of getting admitted to a hospital, and also we have a bigger risk of dying. And if we're going to be serious, when we see the last years, the people who actually dies most, it's like older men. Often, if they're a little bit fatter, also it's more common. Anyway, at our ECU at our hospital, also internationally. And also, when he looked at the research that's done on human leukocytes and on mice, also he saw that it seems like estrogen has some kind of immune system boosting effect. And so you can say that man flu or man cold is maybe it's like a lack of estrogen. It's a deficit disease. We have to go on with propagating to women that it's not just a feeling. We are almost dying every time we get a flu or a cold. So they have to learn.
Yeah, I think so. I think we need more songs. Your one song was not enough to bring this message across. It also didn't get as much attention as Never Google Your Symptoms somehow.
No, it didn't. And actually, we have recorded but not really released a video of it, because actually we recorded the video after the pandemic started, and it felt like we can't release this now because now this is serious. So, but now when the pandemic is over and I can release it, so I'll release it this fall. I think it was very weird because when I wrote it, and we recorded it, it was just very fun. But then suddenly, this is not fun anymore. People are dying.
And talking about COVID, how was COVID for you? I mean, you are pretty much frontline, right? I mean, people come to you with symptoms related to their respiratory tract, and
Yeah, well, I
you are
come
standing there.
in the second line, I would say. But I mean, all patients I meet, when we examine people, we're also always very close to them, like the throat, the mouth, the nose. But I think the ICU and the infection doctors and nurses, anyway, in Sweden, have done most work. But of course, a lot of patient needs to have a tracheostomy, for example, and also treated. So, and then that where we come into the game. It's affected me, of course, but I have other doctors and nurses have worked more, so I can't take credit for that really. But to us, I think the biggest problem today is that we haven't been able to operate much at all the last year. So we have like a growing queue, a growing line of patients that will really need to operate soon. But now the anesthesiologists and the OR people, they're very tired, and I understand them. I agree.
Hmm. And did it affect your relationship to your work? I mean, were you scared? For me, it was easy. I could just social distance, and you can't in your job, right? I mean, you
No.
are in a hospital environment. You see people who are sick, and you don't know exactly what it is. And did that enter your mind, or is that something that, as a doctor, you can completely disassociate
Yeah.
from?
No, I agree. I agree how you think. But to me, as a doctor, it's not like Ebola. 1/10 of a percent dies of the COVID, and it's mostly like men older than me. And so, I mean, the odds are still on my side, I would say. Of course, I mean, we protect each other, but to me, no, I was never really scared. I mean, I'm more scared if I do surgery on a person with an active, I don't know, hepatitis or HIV, because then if something happens, I could get a disease and we examine people. Afterwards, we get to know that they have a tuberculosis or anything. So, I mean, still, it wasn't a huge risk for me, no. So I wasn't really scared. But I mean, some colleagues that I know that were more scared, yeah, wasn't huge.
So I know you are like more focused on the throat and the vocal cords especially, but I mean I have a personal question that's more to the ear, and it's kind of weird. So I have this bouts of excessive earwax, like to an extent that I in the last 3 years I think was 4 times in the clinic and got my ear flushed out because I couldn't hear anymore because my ear
Oh,
was completely
this
blocked.
is serious. No.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
it's.
yes,
I
yes.
mean, it's at least it's serious in that sense that yeah. I mean,
It's
I
a
wake up
hassle.
and
It's a hassle.
my ear is like completely closed. My wife scolds me because I'm not listening to her even less than I normally do, and that's definitely a hassle. But what
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious was because in Hong Kong you go to a doctor, they look, they say, oh yeah, it's blocked. We have to flush it out. We have to check your insurance. They have to confirm that they pay it, and then they do it. And then they flush my ear out, and that's it. There's never kind of like what can possibly cause this. Is there something? Because it's I also have like a little bit irritation on the nose, etc. What would you do
I,
with the cases like this?
of course, of course. I mean, but it's to me, I mean, I've now been working in ENT for 20 years. It's just like some people just seem to get more earwax, and some people, they never get it. But I think it's just individual differences. It can also be the factor that, I mean, you should have earwax. It's produced there, and some people, probably have. It's not as hard earwax, so it just pours out a little bit by little after a while, and it doesn't make plugs out of it. But it's also made numerous. Some people they shed more skin or have more like eczemas and stuff. Probably it's the same in the ear. So I think it's just individual differences. And I would say I haven't found any research that people still know why some people have it more, because I also think that it hasn't been very researched because it's not like a dangerous problem. But of course, I mean, it's for those who have it, it's like they would rather not having it. I agree. I agree. Yeah. So I think we don't know really, but we just when it gets a plug, we take care of it, and then come back when it's full again. it's,
Good. And then I have another topic. I mean, I'm asking for a friend, of
yeah.
course. It's nobody close to me, like
Yes.
nobody
Yes.
who
Yes.
sleeps close to me or so.
Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
snoring,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that something that you also kind of deal with in your practice? And is all snoring the same? Are there different reasons for it? Is there something that you can do? Do those Japanese eye mask work or something? As I said, I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. No, my snoring is it's a very usual problem. I mean, and also in both the women and men, when they're getting older, they snore more. Probably it's because you get like the muscle tension in the mouth, in the palate, in the pharynx. You get a little bit, I mean, it also you get a little bit sloppier. All body the muscles get a little bit looser and stuff, and it's a hard part of the body to practice to work out. But then, of course, factors that makes it worse is, of course, overweight. Because if you have a lot of subcutaneous fat on the skin. It's also more submucosal fat in the pharynx, for example. You seem to be healthy and do your workout and stuff. So, I mean, I also have a friend that have this problem with his wife, and she is not fat at all, this friend's wife, but she still snores a lot. This friend has to push her every night. Now, most people have just what we call social snoring. It sounds a lot, but it's not dangerous at all. But then some persons also have the sleep apnea. The throat gets clogged now and then every night, and they get less oxygen in the blood and stuff. And then, as we give them those either breathing masks or like those what do you call it? Like you put on your teeth, so it push the jaw further in front, and it works pretty much too. Because often the problem is like when you fall asleep deeply and lay on the back, the tongue and the lower jaw falls backwards, and the body, you never suffocates from it, but the body has to wake itself every 5 minutes, and that makes your sleep bad. It makes your heart has to work a lot more. So it's negative health effects on it.
And that's the interesting part, because again, health variables. Garmin in the current extension, they are measuring SpO2 at night, and you can actually see it. So it measures on the wrist, it measures during sleep SpO2, and that particular person goes down below 90% occasionally at night, while I'm normally at 97% at night. So you can actually see it. That's at least some kind of form of sleep apnea, possibly.
I think your friend could go to to a clinic just because, but you want to have more like we call the nightly registration, but you have also so you can synchronize the SpO in the blood and how your breathing pattern and the sound, so you can see where the apneas are coming from. I think that's interesting, and also see how it affects you, of course.
Yeah, that was pretty much my consultation here that I wanted to get in.
But I think it's a good question, because a lot of the listeners will because it's a very usual problem. So I think it's not for your friend. I think a lot of people also can.
No, I mean, I come from a line of snorers. My dad snores like a bear, and I do an annual hiking trip with a friend of mine who also snores pretty significantly. So yeah, I think.
So now we have two tents that you put up 100 meters apart.
So far not. I'm used to suffer. It's okay. Yeah, so I think I have most of my questions covered that I wanted to ask you. But you are a man on a mission. You are fighting misinformation. So is there anything that we didn't mention that we should still talk about? Is there something that for you also kind of related to your specialty, something that everybody gets wrong, or that's people should do kind of to maybe as a preventive health measure?
Where should I start? No, but I mean, I think people are clever, and most people, they know what they should do with their health and their bodies, but they don't always do it. Like, for example, I think all people probably know that they should maybe work out more, but it's kind of boring. It's more fun just to take it easy. So they do that instead. And in my area, of course, and people know that smoking is bad. It's very bad. I mean, if cigarettes would invented today, they would never be allowed in any country. But I've also a lot of patients that smoke when they're old men, and they would never stop smoking. And I treat their cancers anyways, but they would probably don't have to have them if they stopped smoking. That's maybe the more important message. And if I would say a less important message, I can say that I think I will release a new English album in September called X-Ray to Hell.
X-Ray to Hell. That sounds like it's going to be a bit harder, especially also that you're a otolaryngologist. I mean, I was expecting whisper heavy metal or something like Rammstein style, like
yeah.
I have a guitar.
I have to growl more. I agree. But I see Rammstein it's a very good. I think they're.
I remember I have my best throat anecdote is when I was in my first toy job. I was leading a team and we did some important product launches, and I lost my voice completely. And I had this meeting. I had my two young product managers, one on the left and one on my right, and then I whispered into their ear, like really like the Godfather, like, I think we have to lower the price on this packaging. It was very powerful. I felt really like the Godfather, and I sounded definitely like the Godfather. And
Yeah. Do you think that the clients, the customers, don't you think they got a little bit impressed and thought, oh, we have to treat this guy good?
yeah, they didn't see it. It was just internal meetings. I'm not a person who takes easy sick leaves. Hence, I kind of limped to work and whispered in my stuff. In another interesting one is, and that's maybe like of research interest for you, Adam. Many years ago, after spending an internship in Malaysia, I enjoyed the Malaysian kitchen a lot. So then I was in Japan for my exchange year, and I took a young lady out for a dinner to a Malaysian restaurant. And I ordered my favorite food, beef rendang. It's beef that is cooked in coconut milk and a lot of chili for a very long time until it gets very, very soft. And you eat it with rice. And I eat the first spoon and I lost my voice. It was so spicy, it killed my voice. It was kind of a semi-date. It was not exactly a date, but a person I met for the first time that I communicated previously only by email. And I couldn't talk. Seriously, it took me like after 2 hours, it came slowly back. First, I could whisper a bit, then it was a bit coarse and rough. And at the end of the night, I kind of had a jazzy voice that was not my normal voice. I've only encountered this once in my life, but it was amazing. And I didn't know that spicy food can actually take your voice cords out. I didn't know that.
No, I think probably you got like a small vocal cord edema. Probably. I mean, it was. I don't know if you like aspirate in the beginning, but I think it's that the same effect when you have laryngitis or when you have like some sore throat. That then the vocal cords they get like swollen, like an edema. And to me, it sounds like maybe the first chili got down there, and that's why maybe. Did you cough a lot in the beginning? Did you like
Not even. It was really just kind of like, oh, boy, that's spicy. It's very spicy. And I cannot talk.
Interesting. Yeah. So never eat beef rendang when you have a first date.
I recommend it to everybody. It's the best dish ever. I don't know like who invented it, but it's lovely. But it can occasionally kill your voice. Be forewarned.
But maybe it's good in that situation. Maybe if you have to whisper to her, you come closer. You have to.
So I think it's possibly another lyric for one of your next upcoming albums. I will not take any credit. So you could just.
I'll give you credit for it.
Go ahead. Everybody should listen to your songs. You are very generous in the way that you are anyway on all platforms. You also put out a lot of YouTube content. You do videos for a lot of your songs. And you even like let people freely download your songs. I don't know who's doing that anymore. I think that must be the Swedish generosity there.
Yeah. It's our socialist like basic in Sweden.
Yeah. So, but of course, everybody should kind of play you on repeat in Spotify so that you get 0.1 cent for every play or whatever they are paying nowadays. I will link everything. I had a lot of fun. I mean, I knew that this is going to be a really, really fun episode, and it was exactly what I expected. And
very fun that you to talk to you. I mean, it's not every day I talk to people from Hong Kong. It's very, very nice.
I think I learned a lot, and I think you're the best example for how really two careers is the way to go. I mean, just don't settle for one, and maybe also don't have too much expectations to your main job. Just whatever you miss in your main job, look if there's not some other outlet where you can get those things that you're missing. And if everything goes right, then you're as successful as you, because I think you're having a lot of fun like doing your music. And it's nice if you then suddenly get a little bit of reward for all the effort too.
I agree. It must be the conclusion. I agree totally.
Thank you very much, Henrik.
Thank you very much.
This was Life-Sparring Round 15. Never Google Your Symptoms with guest star Dr. Henrik Widegren. I'm your host, Fabian Gruber. As mentioned in the beginning of the episode, this podcast is for the purpose of information and entertainment only and does not provide medical advice. If you suspect that you have a medical problem, please seek a local medical professional without a delay. And as today's guests put it so eloquently and melodically, never Google your symptoms. Life-Sparring is produced by Thomas Latter. Intro and outro beat are by my Casey producer. More info about Life-Sparring and this episode in particular, including the links to Henrik's albums and music videos, you can find at Life-Sparring.com/podcast. Life-Sparring with a hyphen. If you learned something useful about the man flu or just enjoyed the show, please leave a like or a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts from. I hope you join us again for the next round of Life-Sparring. Until then, stay healthy, keep your hands up and protect yourself at all times.